Hey everyone, today is Monday, and this lesson is going to be your Reading Street ELA lesson. We are reading a new story for Unit 5, Week 4. It's called Jalapeño Bagels. So I'm going to turn to that page. It is on page 296. So go ahead and flip open to that page. Now, before I do start, I do want to just mention a couple things. First of all, I think that everyone is doing such a fantastic job, an amazing job with all of this work online. And I think about how difficult it is to be able to juggle all of this work and use those computers, something that we're not really used to. And I just think you guys are all doing such an amazing job. So keep up the work, the good work. And I'm super, super proud of you. So keep it going. All right, so when we are ready, let's start. We're going to read our story on 296 called Jalapeño Bagels. It's by Natasha Wing, illustrated by Antonio L. Castro. And the genre has not changed for a couple of weeks. It's called realistic fiction. Now, this is a made-up story, but it could be something that happens in real life. All right, and when we move over to 297, our question of the week, or our essential question, it says, how can different cultures contribute to the food that we eat? So this whole unit, we've been talking a lot about how different cultures, depending on what country you go to, things are going to be a bit different. Well, that also goes for the food that you eat when you go to different countries. Now, I'm sure you've all tried many different foods. Maybe you've had Chinese food, or maybe you've had Spanish food, or maybe you've had Japanese food. There's all different types of food, and they all taste different. And the reason is because those countries are using the resources and the crops and the foods that are available to them where they live. So that is the reason that some of the food tastes different depending on where you go. They have different flavors, they have different nutrition, and different dishes. Now today actually is going to be all about Mexican food culture. So that's one of the foods that I really enjoy. And believe it or not, you probably won't believe me, but tonight I had spicy tacos, and I also had jalapenos stuffed with cream cheese and bacon, and that's what I had for dinner. So it was kind of ironic that we were reading a story all about jalapenos. Okay, so go ahead and turn to 298. Now you're probably wondering, well, it's the morning, right? It's Monday morning, but I'm actually videoing this right now on Sunday night. So that's probably why you're wondering why I already had dinner. So we are on now 298. It says, what should I bring to school on Monday for International Day? I asked my mother. My teacher told us to bring something from our culture. You can bring a treat from the Pandaria, she suggests. Panaderia is what Mama calls our bakery. Help us bake on Sunday. Then you can pick out whatever you want. It's a deal, I tell her. I like helping at the bakery. It's warm there and everything smells so good. Early Sunday morning, when it's still dark, my mother wakes me up. Pablo, it's time to go to work, she says. Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question, which is our comprehension skill of the week, drawing conclusions. We've been doing it a lot. Now, I want you to draw a conclusion right now. How can you figure out who runs this bakery? Now, in the story, it didn't actually tell us who owns or runs the bakery, but I think you guys can kind of figure it out. So think about that for a moment. So based on this page and what we read, I think that we were all able to figure out that it's Pablo's parents that run the bakery, which is why Pablo is going there to find something for International Day. Okay, let's move to 299. All right. It says, we walk down the street to the bakery. My father turns on the lights. My mother turns on the oven. She gets out the pans and ingredients for pan dulce. Pan dulce is a Mexican sweet bread. Now, the word ingredients is one of our vocab words. Oh, where did I put it? Here it is. Ingredients. So the ingredients are all the different materials that you need in order to cook something. So for example, some of them could be flour, sugar, vanilla, all the different things that you might put together to make whatever it is you're making. So those are ingredients. All right. I help my mother mix and knead the dough. She shapes, rolls, and loaves of bread and slides them into the oven. People tell her she makes the best pan dulce in town. Maybe I'll bring pan dulce to school, I tell her. So we had another vocab word. And a lot of these words, I think that you've probably seen before. This one is dough, okay? And dough is just a sticky mixture that is used to make things like bread, or maybe cookies, or cake, or even pizza, okay? So what they do is they knead the dough when they're creating it, and that basically just means to fold it together and make sure it sticks together nice and strong in order to make it, okay? And it's actually made out of flour and usually some other liquids to keep it a little bit moist and stick together. Now there was a vocab word on the last page. I want to show you that one quick too, and that's bakery, okay? And a bakery is just a store that sells baked goods. We had a story earlier this year, I think it was the supermarket, and when you go to the supermarket, there is usually a spot there where they bake things called the bakery. And you can go there to pick up things like cake and bread and whatever other baked goods you're looking for. Pies, cakes, pastries, things like that. All right, let's turn the page to 300. Okay, next, we make empanadas de calabaza. They're called pumpkin turnovers. I'm in charge of spooning the pumpkin filling. Mama folds the dough in half and presses the edges with a fork. She bakes them until they're flaky and golden brown. Some customers come to our bakery just for her turnovers. Now, one quick question before we move on. I'm sure you're all wondering, or you already know, what language do you think is this word, empanadas de calabaza? Now, we know that there are pumpkin turnovers, which is a little pastry with like a pumpkin filling inside. But what language do you think that is? All right, so I know you're probably all thinking Spanish, and you are correct. It is Spanish. And I believe the story that Mrs. LaBarbera read to you a few weeks ago also had a lot of Spanish words and Spanish language in it. So it is this. Okay, 301. Maybe I'll bring empanadas de calabaza instead. You'll figure it out, she says. Ready to make chango bars? Chango means monkey man. Okay, turn the page. 302. Mama let me pour in the chocolate chips and nuts. When she's not looking, I pour in more chocolate chips. I could bring my chango bars. They are my favorite dessert. Mine too, says Mama. This batch should be especially good. I put in extra chips. Okay, we have another word, and that word is batch. Now, a batch is a group of something, and usually it has to do with baking. Maybe it could be a group of cookies. It could be a group of whatever it is that you're cooking. So that is what a batch is. And it looks like here they made some cookies. Okay, moving on. 303. My father calls from the back room. Pablo, come help me with the bagels. Papa speaks English and Yiddish. He learned Yiddish from his family in New York City. I know some words too. Bube means grandmother. He uses my bube's recipe to make their bagels. First, he makes the dough in a big metal bowl. Then, he rolls it out into a long rope shape. He cuts off pieces and shows me how to connect the ends in a circle. We put the circles on trays where they sit and rise. Okay, so now I have another question for you. And this is a prediction question, so you have to guess what's going to happen based on what you know. So, based on what we have read so far, what can you predict will happen next? Okay, so go ahead and think about that for a moment. Okay, so the prediction that I had made is, well, so far I know that they're making a few different baked goods, and what I think is going to happen is they're going to continue making some other different baked goods, and then eventually Pablo may decide on what he wants to bring to International Day. Okay, let's turn the page to 304. It says, while we are waiting, my father makes challah, which is a Jewish braided bread. He lets me practice braiding challah dough at my own counter. It's a lot like braiding hair. The customer says it is almost too beautiful to eat. Maybe I'll bring a loaf of challah to school. I tell Papa, and he smiles. When the bagel dough has risen, he boils the bagels in a huge pot of water and fishes them out with a long slotted spoon. I sprinkle on poppy seeds and sesame seeds, and then they go in the oven. Okay, so one quick question before we keep moving. Why do you think Papa smiled? So think about that. Why do you think Papa smiled? Okay, well, I believe that the reason Papa smiled is because Pablo told him that he may want to take that challah. Now, I think that made Papa smile because that is part of his Jewish culture. Now, I know that Pablo is Spanish, but because of his father, he's also half Jewish. And I think that if he were to bring in that, it would make his father very happy that he's showing a piece of his culture to the rest of his school or class. Okay, and the rest of the page, 305 says, maybe I could bring sesame seed bagels with cream cheese. No lox? Lox is a smoked salmon. My father's favorite bagel is pumpernickel with a smear of cream cheese and lox. I crinkle my nose. Lox taste like fish. Jam is much better. Okay, so we had a couple more vocab words. We had braided. And braided means that you are weaving or you have something that's woven together. It's like when you braid hair, you could also braid dough to make this looking kind of bread. Believe it or not, I actually know how to braid hair because when I was growing up, my little sister sometimes needed help with braiding her hair before she went to school. So I learned actually how to do a French braid, which I think is almost like this, except it has one more. So I think there's 3 that you have to weave together. So believe it or not, Mr. Watson does know how to braid hair. You're probably surprised by that. Okay, and then our next one is boils. And this is when you take water and you heat it up until it starts bubbling. And by the time that it's bubbling, it's a certain temperature that's very hot. You can actually cook food in it. So another thing that's cool is when you bubble the water, something comes off of it, more of like a steam. And if you think back to when we were learning in science, it's kind of cool because that water, which is in liquid form, that's the state of matter that it's in, liquid. When it's heated up, you can see the gas, that the steam rise up. So it's actually turning from liquid to a gas form, which is kind of interesting, just because of the temperature. Now, of course, you know, if you were to take water and you were to drop the temperature down below, what would happen to the water, do you think? It wouldn't turn to a gas form. It would actually turn to a solid form because the water would turn into ice. Okay, so I kind of just had a little science lesson, but for the word, it is boils, okay? When you heat something up until it's bubbling. All right, and let's turn the page to 306. My mother joins us and helps my father make another batch of bagels, Jalapeño bagels. My parents use their own special recipe. While Papa kneads the dough, Mama chops the jalapeno chilies. She tosses them into the dough and adds some dried red peppers. We roll, cut, make circles, and let them rise. I can't wait until they're done because I am getting hungry. So I don't know if you've ever had a jalapeno bagel before, but they're definitely different from other bagels. How are they different, do you think? And you could actually use the information that's on this page to figure that out. So how are jalapeno bagels different from maybe sesame bagels or poppy bagels, seed bagels? Well, the difference is the ingredients that are used in them. So jalapeno bagels use jalapeno chilies that are cut up and put into the bread or into the dough. And then they also use red peppers chopped up and put in there. They're very spicy jalapenos. You have to make sure that when you're done cutting them and using them, you need to wash your hands. So like today, when I was actually cutting my jalapenos before I put them in the oven, I washed my hands 3 or 4 times because the spices get on your hands and you don't want to touch your eyes with them. And we have a visitor. So let's all pause. This is Tammy, and she is very nosy. So whenever she sees me, she follows me everywhere, and she found me hidden in the office. So say hi, Tammy. Tammy, look at the camera. Can you say hi? No? All right. You're going to need to go out of the office and leave us alone, okay? Say bye, guys. Bye. Now, go, Tammy, go. She'll probably find her way back in here. All right, where were we? Oh, okay, we're on page 307. And it says, have you decided what you're going to bring to school? Asked Mama. Well, it's so hard to choose. Everything's so good, I tell her. I look at Papa, except for lox. You should decide before we open, warns Mama, or else our customers will buy everything up. So real quick, we're going to draw conclusions again. Do you think that Pablo's parents' bakery is a good one? Do you think it's a successful one? Do you think they make decent money with that bakery? So think about that for a moment and why, yes or no. All right, so I would definitely say that the bakery is a successful one. And I would draw that conclusion because it said in there, in that paragraph or that page, that all the customers buy everything up. Well, they must be a pretty good business and they must make very good food because all of their customers are buying everything up. So I would definitely say yes. Okay, let's turn to 308. And this is our last 2 pages. It says, I walk past all the sweet breads, chango bars, and bagels. I think about my mother and my father and all of the different things they make in the bakery. And suddenly I know exactly what I'm going to bring. Jalapeno bagels, I tell my parents, and I'll spread them with cream cheese and jam. Why jalapeno bagels? Asked Papa. Because they are a mixture of both of you, just like me. So in the end, Pablo decides that he wants to bring the jalapeno bagels. And the reason is because it has a mixture of both cultures of his mother and his father. His mother, I believe, has a Spanish background, and the father has a Jewish background. So he took both of those and mixed them together in his jalapeno bagel, which I think was a great idea. So now if you look on 309, this is actually a recipe. So if you ever wanted to make them at home, okay, you could. It says, for this recipe, you will need lots of time, but these bagels are worth the wait. Ask an adult to help you. So it says jalapeno bagels. 1 3/4 cups of lukewarm water, 1½ teaspoons of dry yeast, 2 teaspoons of salt, 1 1/2 tablespoons of sugar, 5 to 6 cups of flour, 1/3 cup of jalapenos chopped, and 1/4 cup of dried red peppers. And then what it says, mix water, yeast, salt, and sugar, add flour and jalapenos, and mix it into a ball. Knead, which is that folding it 10 to 12 minutes, adding more flour if necessary until the dough is stiff. Add red peppers and knead for 3 minutes. Let the dough rest for 10 minutes and then cut into 12 pieces with a knife. So there are a lot of steps here. So you definitely might want to take your time if you plan on doing this. Roll each piece of dough on the table to form long cigar-like shapes. Then for each of the 12 pieces, connect the two ends by overlapping them about 3/4 of an inch and rolling the ends together to make a ring shape. Make sure each joint is secure or it will come apart while boiling. Cover with a damp towel and let rise 1 to 1 1/2 hours in a warm spot. In a large pot, bring 1 to 2 gallons of water to a rolling boil. Place the bagels in the boiling water and boil until they float. That'll take 15 to 30 seconds. Remove with a slotted spoon and place on a lightly greased cookie sheet. Bake at 400 degrees for 10 to 15 minutes or until golden brown. Note, a bakery uses dry malt instead of sugar and high gluten flour, which you may be able to get at a bakery or a pizza parlor. For the milder bagel, reduce the quantities of the peppers. Now, keep in mind that these are spicy. So if you don't like spicy food, maybe you'd want to choose a different type of bagel to make. But I know that I like jalapeno bagels and I like to eat spicy food, but I can understand if you don't. Okay, so that is the end of our story today. I just want to remind you guys again what a fantastic job you've all been doing. I'm very proud of you guys, and keep up all of the good work. If you have any questions, please reach out to me, and I will see you all tomorrow at our Zoom meeting at 9:30. Can't wait to see all of you guys there. Oh, and one last note. Just so you know, when we do our Zoom meetings from now on, what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep everyone muted. That way, not everyone can speak at the same time. And that way, when we're doing our work, you guys can raise your hand. I can call on somebody, unmute you, and then you'll be able to speak and answer the questions that I ask, okay? Okay, guys, thanks a lot, and I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. Have a good day.